Hello, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful session. Thank you to all of you for spending your cold afternoon being warm with us. And we invite you to put questions in the chat. My name is Kelly Kaur, and I am the moderator today. So I am excited to have this wonderful panel here, and I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves to you. So let's start with Ernesto.
Hello, Kelly. Hello to all our audience. I'm Ernesto Campo. I'm a Canadian Venezuelan writer. I have a background in journalism. I was doing that for 13 years. And currently, I'm sitting in Calgary and working with a nonprofit organization that helps newcomers to come to Alberta.
All right, ViNa.
Hello, Kelly. Hello, Ernesto, Mila, and everyone joining us here today. My name is ViNa Nguyễn. I was born and raised on Treaty 7 and 6 territories. My parents are Vietnamese refugees. I write mostly about queer, diasporic, I would say resistance and imagination. Lots of short stories, currently working on a novel. Thank you.
All right, Mila.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for sharing this, your lunchtime with us. I'm Mila Philipzig. I'm based in Edmonton, and I mostly write children's books. So I have 5 bilingual books published, and I'm happy to announce I have 2 more coming out in the next year. And I also write essays and articles and help edit anthologies for BIPOC writers. And I'm very happy to be here sharing your afternoon with Ernesto, ViNa, and Kelly.
All right, so welcome to all of you. And I'm Kelly Kaur. I was born in Singapore, so you can take me anywhere because I won't vandalize and I don't chew gum. So I'm well behaved on most occasions. So let's begin our discussion. And it is one that is very intriguing and interesting, especially for us writers of color, BIPOC writers, immigrants, all the different names and terms that we are connected to, connected with. So the questions we have at hand today, the first one is, do newcomers and immigrants to Alberta face more pressure to write about current issues in their place of origin than other writers? So Mila is going to start first.
Right. This question, I think I'm inclined to respond to it by asking more questions just to get us started. So I think one of the questions that comes to my mind is where is this perceived or pressure or real pressure coming from? Is it from the readers, the publishers? Is it from your heritage community? Is it from other writers? So, and where is this pressure coming from? And how does a writer get to know or feel this pressure? You know, and I think as Kelly already alluded to, the term immigrant comes into play in this question as here. So who is exactly an immigrant? Because there are so many terms, you know, like migrants, immigrants, newcomers, refugees, settlers, settler immigrants, expatriates, exiles. So how do these terms or these categories impact the question, right? If you feel the pressure to write about current events, you know, I think the terms that apply or people apply to us, it kind of insinuates, you know, the situation, how somebody came to be in Alberta, and the reasons that someone or that group of people came over, and it also highlights what is happening in their country of origin at the time when people came over, right? So if there's a pressure to write something about, let's say, back home, is it the same for somebody who is considered a refugee or an expatriate or a settler? or a newcomer? No, so, and then I think the last thing that was going through my mind with this question is, does the heritage country of that writer matter? You know, where that person is from and what is happening, or how big are the issues currently happening that is known globally or that is being discussed in the mainstream. So, you know, like there's already so many other discussion topics just with that one question. So I was in a workshop with Primi Mohammed, who is you know, award-winning speculative writer, and she has an Indo-Caribbean background. And she said she still gets asked. She writes science fiction or speculative fiction, and she still gets asked, "Hey, why don't you write about mangoes and palm trees?" And so there seems to be this expectation, you know, if you're visibly, like from your name or from the way you look, visibly an immigrant or so and so on, there's this expectation of what you will be writing about. But where is that coming from? And is it the same for, again, all immigrants, right? So for me, I don't have the pressure personally. I don't feel it to write about current events about the Philippines. And I think I'm not big enough of a writer to worry about readership and sales and marketability. That's why there's no pressure. But I feel compelled to write about it. But that is coming from me, myself, you know, because being an immigrant, it starts with a big disruption, you know, a rupture. And I think that that break from a country, from your family, from the things, you know, that always kind of seeps into your trying to make sense of that loss. And so it kind of seeps into my writing. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't feel the pressure, but it's my own choice and I keep writing about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think so. And you raise many important questions. For example, I'm from Singapore. I really don't want to write about the politics of Singapore for many reasons. I don't want to go to jail if I say the wrong thing. And I've been away long enough that it is not really my interest. I'm more interested in human beings and those stories that, you know, to me, doesn't matter where you're from, they are the same. We share the same stories to some extent. So Ernesto, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I totally agree with Mila. The pressure, the expectation is totally related to the way you are labeled. So it's hard for me to being identified as a South American, because usually here in Alberta or in North America as a whole, when anyone approach me, they think I'm Mexican, like everyone is Mexican, apart from maybe Brazilians or Argentinians. So they expect me to write about guacamole or spicy food or trivial things. And then, having said that, how can I mean, probably I will end up giving a lecture on geography, and this is very boring for people. Then maybe the pressure will come from my community if I try to like put it in perspective. But they are only expecting me to, in the case of my home country, that is Venezuela, they are only expecting me to call the regime that is leading there a dictatorship. But other than that, as I'm not very well known, even among my community here in Calgary, they are not expecting me to write about that. And even if I were eager to do that, where should I like express those words? Are there spaces to do that? Maybe not currently. And from within, I will maybe have the expectation to talk about that, because I have a background in journalism. I used to be sitting at a newsroom writing about politics, and then it was like a habit. Every day I was writing about that, and then I will feel nostalgia about doing that. But is it fair to do it when I've been abroad for more than 10 years now? That country I was living in, it doesn't exist anymore. And I'm not dealing with the hardships my fellow Venezuelans are still living there. I'm not experiencing that difficulties they are living in right now. So maybe I'm not doing any favor to the cause of liberty and freedom if I'm not able to portray or to express accurately what is currently happening there. And other thing I was considering, reflecting on this question, is maybe if I do that, if I write an op-ed or an article about that, maybe will sound like a pamphlet in this polarized world. Do I want to take that risk? Other thing is that expectation may be linked with the path I've had as a migrant. I was lucky enough to come here taking a plane, and I didn't have to cross the border walking. I didn't have to pay a coyote. I'm really grateful for the way I ended up here. And fortunately, for those who are interested in having on reading that experiences that Venezuelans are having right now, there are some awesome writers addressing those topics. And if we have time, I will mention three amazing women writers that just address those topics.
Yeah, I think I hear the word expectation quite a bit. And I think that is the one big word that is certainly what writers feel, all writers, and then definitely what we feel. And I think you say something very important when you say there's so many writers. Let each one do what he, she, they want to do so that you, the reader, you get a choice. You go to the bookstore or the library and you can pick what you want instead of imposing expectations on any writer. Right? ViNa, what do you think?
Yeah, so absolutely. I won't talk too much about the outward pressure that is coming in on the writer from the literary dominant landscape or the publishing landscape. I think both Mila and Ernesto have spoken very well on those things. So I'll just shift my perspective a bit and talk about, from my perspective as a second generation Vietnamese refugee, being born in a colonial state and growing up and straddling multiple cultures and identities, I think many who are like me, we have learned how to pick out these patterns within the system of how over-excluded groups face a lot of injustice. And so when we write, or I should say when I write, I don't write about my home country, and for myself, when I use the word home country, it's very loaded, it's very complicated. I also have, it's a completely other issue, other question, but for me to even feel comfortable to write about Vietnam, I feel it's a lifelong journey. There's a lot of insecurity there for me, but what I'm trying to say is when I write about patterns that I notice that come from systems of exploitation, colonialism, all these things in my stories. And I think when you have been raised as that being your fabric, it naturally becomes so intertwined with your personhood. You can't ignore it. You notice it every day, personally and outwardly. You notice all the signs, you pick out the patterns, not with your own, just with your own history, but everyone else's history. And I think what it does is it compels you to naturally write about those things, whether you want to or not. It just seeps into your writing because it's the thing that you have to grapple with daily. There's a book my friend lent to me. It's by Leanne Betasamosake Simpson, Dancing on Our Turtle's Back. And in the first chapter, there's something that Leanne talks about that stuck with me just for days and weeks, actually. I just took a note, just want to make sure I say it right. So she's saying how colonial shame is like this infectious agent of the cognitive imperialism. And why that's so important is that colonial shame teaches us people of the diaspora to internalize this sense of being defeated or that there's no point in resisting or resurging. And from Leanne's point of view, the way to fight against that is to connect with stories of resistance. And I honestly think that's why right now, so many of us writers, we bear witness and we speak out against the genocide of the Palestinians, for example, because we see so much commonality. Our stories of resistance are all connected, like we're all interrelated, we're all connected. It's one big world that's all interconnected. And so I think for us to draw upon these stories is utterly important and natural. So I don't think I feel the pressure to do that. I feel it just happens and it's just part of who I am and it's part of my writing.
That's wonderful. I agree with that. Definitely, I think that there is that tension that some of us feel, as writers of where to place ourselves and our words and our meanings and our stories. And that takes us very nicely to the second question of how do writers, especially immigrant and refugee writers, deal with the many global distractions enough to write about anything else? Ernesto, what do you think?
Yeah, regarding this, I have maybe a naive motto, just doing art. It comes to a point when you have to try to metabolize what is happening, the current important and global issues, and then turn these issues into art. And it's not easy to disconnect. Every day you cannot stop watching the news, especially if you were connected to media. It's more than a habit to sit there and consume that information. But if you want to impact or advocate for justice and freedom and decolonization, you will have to be able to be above that, metabolize again, and then try to come up with stories that from the side or from the place you will feel comfortable, you deliver those stories to help these causes, the ones you consider that are fair. And you will help people then with art to seek refuge, to turn that frustration, anxiety, anger, fear into a positive feeling. So for me, I try to not to focus on not after I do the process to turn this into art. I try to find a way to connect this with universal subjects and then create characters. For example, I'm working on a book about discrimination and newcomers struggling to settle in the city. And then my main character is my dog who cannot bark without accent, my dog who is trying to fit in. Because that's the way I find to express those emotions or those struggles I find in my community, as a human being here Alberta.
Yeah, that's true. I like that because it's that sense of comfort and discomfort, right? Only in the sense of discomfort, then there is that resistance and that information that you share. And using the dog seems to me like the perfect way of showing that situation where people try to fit in. Mila, what do you think?
Oh, Mila, you're muted.
Sorry, I have 3 dogs, so I mute myself when I'm not speaking. Okay, I think like underneath all this, what we're calling the global distractions, as ViNa mentioned, everything is interconnected. So even if you're not writing about the current events, exactly about like what's happening recently or what's happening now, underneath all that are all the fundamental literary topics or themes that allows us to create art or our writing, right? Like good versus evil, or power and corruption, and loss and love and fear, identity, justice, freedom, all of those, history and memory. So coming from my age and also where I come from, I my inspiration is always can I write or do something to impact or to effect social change? I think it's common from countries similar as the Philippines and maybe Africa as well, where there's a turbulent colonial past where, when you're trying to do something, you're always trying to do like, well, can I do something so that I can be an agent of change somehow? And I think this comes out in my writing as well. That for me, it's always an act of resistance somehow. Writing, it's an act of protest. So for me, it's like, what's the point of art if not to resist? Like resist the mainstream, resist all the labels put on you, and resist socially as well. So it's, I think, writers and artists in general, it's just a refusal to be quiet or not do anything when you find something that seeks to dehumanize people, whether it's power or oppression or censorship, right? So I think even if you're not writing about the exact what's happening recently or currently, I think if you're trying to make sense of your world around you and trying to affect social change, or just trying to lead people to see like there can be alternative ways, like for the future there, or moving forward, then in a way you're still participating in the dialogue of all these artworks, in the past and in the current time.
That's true. I agree with that. And I think that, again, the key word here is the role. You choose what you want to do, right? If you want to resist, if you want social change, then clearly your writing will show that. But maybe there are others who want to write just what they're comfortable with that does not include any of that. And I think that's the power of freedom and the power of choice that writers have and should embrace wholeheartedly. ViNa, where are you on this question?
Yeah, wow, this is great. I'm pulling on so many words here, like Kelly, your word, the role of us writers. Ernesto, when you said metabolizing, that really stuck with me. And then Mila, the dehumanization. So in my head, all of this just kind of swirled together. What I'm thinking is, it takes so much energy to ignore and avoid things as well. Like, as much as we feel that we are confronted with these truths on as a daily thing, for us to, let's say, and I don't want to use this word in a way that, makes people feel judged. But like self-care, for example, I think sometimes can be skewed to the point where you are now focusing energy on pushing away the hard truths, because big emotions need big shoulders, right? And if I'm understanding you correctly, Ernesto, how I see that is kind of connected with what you were saying is you need to nurture the skill to be able to metabolize these big truths, these big feelings that are all intertwined with one another, right? And facing the senseless like dehumanization, it can really immobilize you. But I think what can come into greater practice is shifting the frames in which we engage with these hard truths. So for me, I don't judge writers who maybe perhaps want to avoid those things, but in my mind, I see it quite differently. I don't see it as writing about current events or not, and writing about everything else, because again, it's all connected. And so for me, I actually think, the human spirit is very resilient. We are very creative. We can pull beauty. We can imagine new landscapes, new coexistences from our struggles by creating hopes and dreams as writers for our readers. And I think that is very important. So there's a Palestinian poet I've been following, Mossab Abu Toha. And you know what? He inspires me because his feed is consumed with the current ongoing genocide. And it consumes his poetry, or I would actually argue it's the opposite. His poetry consumes the ongoing genocide. And so that metabolism of that dehumanization aspect has pushed him to a point where he is utterly prolific. He writes new poems almost every day, not just about the struggle and the pain, but about the resilience, the joy, you know. And it helps not only people who are shouldering the worst of the conflict, but people like us who sometimes feel hopeless as bystanders, and we're able to connect with these truths and with each other in order to strengthen our imagination. We don't have to sink into hopelessness. We can imagine and digest these things in a myriad of forms, a myriad of different forms of storytelling, of structures, of detail. And I think that's the thing. It's like, if we think that this bearing witness would shrink our potential as artists, I think perhaps it could actually be the opposite, that it would expand our capacity for imagining hope. That's kind of my stance on that.
Definitely, I agree with that. I think that's very powerful. I just judged a poetry contest where one of the writers wrote about people, the couple, being intimate during wartime. And it was just startling because the focus is always on war, that you forget about living and loving. And so when I read the poem several times, it was uncomfortable, but comfortable. And I think that's the power of writing when you talk about judge and judging and who gets to write what. So thank you for that. And now we move to the third question, which is very interesting. All of them were, but should current events and related topics be prioritized by all writers in all genres? Why or why not? The million-dollar question. Let's see. Mila, what do you think?
Oh, no, definitely not. And I strongly say no. It should not be prioritized by all writers. And, the writers should, and artists, but anyway, writers should write what they know best, what they truly love, what they're passionate about. And if that includes the current events, fine, then write about it, right? But to be pressured or to be instructed to write about it, especially for immigrants and that's such an imposition, and I don't think it will result to the best work of that writer, right? I think I mentioned earlier that writing is sort of a form of dialogue, you know, an exchange of ideas and dreams and hopes. You know, it's all woven from past to present with other writers and other readers. So, and just as it takes different length of time for a writer to come to terms with all their experiences and write about them, you know, the readers, it also takes, they also develop at different times. It takes them a different time to be a reader, and even the same reader may change their choice of reading material through their lifetime, right? So as you also mentioned already, Kelly, there should be always this diverse array of genre and styles and writing and topics, you know, available to the readers out there. And this maybe preoccupation with trends or marketability of topics that should be done. I'm concerned about AI. And the publishers who are now trending towards the use of AI for publishing, for quicker publishing, right? So, you know, like you say, look, there's something, the conflict in Sudan is escalating. Write me a thriller romance, you know, mid-sized novel in the style of, I don't know, Leila Sala or Dan Brown, you know, then if that's where we're going, then AI can quickly overtake us, because human writers, you know, it's not just repeating all the current events in better crafted sentences, right? Like, you think about it in terms of your past, your experiences, your thoughts with your community, and so on and so forth. Like, it's gonna take time. Like, maybe you know, there won't be any depth, or the results won't be good if we're just forced to like write it on the spot under demand. I guess, unless you're a journalist. So for me, I think writing takes time. So and writers are too slow. Maybe we think too much, or maybe we feel too much. So we can't just respond to current events just like that.
That's true. The dreaded word AI. So indeed, that's a difficult one. But I find it interesting because when it talks about current events and genres, what I found in Singapore now, as you know, Singapore has some strict stipulations, even with writing and for writers. So I was surprised. And when I asked one of the writers there, he said to me, some of them use science fiction as the tool of resistance to talk about issues of politics or, LGBTQ issues. And that is how it is allowed into writing. So I think writers are very smart, and they know the tools to use as well. What about you, ViNa?
Oh, that was unexpected. So I definitely agree that science fiction has always been, but maybe perhaps now more so, a tool of resistance. Um, and I want to be absolutely clear that I when I say that, you know, stories of resistance or writing about current events, I don't mean like making it the subject of our stories, but it must be that we consider and engage. If we are building the worlds of our stories, we need to consider, what system is it? It's not just a blob of nothing. Even a very, you know, closed in romantic scene, or maybe a rom-com, or a very fantastical type of world, is built upon a system that will have whatever injustices or privileges we create for it. And even if we don't put it directly, explicitly in the story, it will emerge in some way. And so for me, how I think about this is, if we are unclear or uncomfortable, or unsure perhaps, of what type of world we are building as we are crafting our story, then the gears of the system of which we've been brought up in or that we've been exposed to will inevitably show their gears in every nook and cranny of our stories. And it shows up, like even for Harry Potter, right? The names that are used for Chinese or Black characters in the story, like it just shows. And if that is something, that we care about, then I think we have to show the same level of care in our own writing. And we don't have to, write about it in a way that we don't want to, but I think the consideration and the thought there needs to happen. Yeah.
I like that. I like the extra care and attention that we writers have to engage in and with our characters. And on the other hand, sometimes it does sound like extra work and extra homework as well. We know what's happening out there. We know not enough is being done, so we try to fill in the gaps. But that is the role that the writer decides, and that's where then the avenue for more discussion comes up. So something as simple as a name, I agree. I think that something so small can be so big for the person involved. What about you, Ernesto? What do you think about question 3?
Yeah, I would say that in some way, as we are contemporary writers, we are some way writing about current events. The only thing is that we are doing it from different perspectives, different rhythms. As Mila was saying, we need time. Writing takes time. And there are some stories that are like really crucial right now, and then you need the distance from that story or from that crisis or that hardship to really be able to present it the way it was happening, right? And on the other hand, I firmly believe that we should not be obligated to write about anything. It's our choice when to do it, how to do it, what genre using. I mean, for example, for covering events in my country, you will find brave immigrants that went to different parts of South America, that went to horrible stories and horrible paths, and then they are turning that into amazing books, and they are just helping people from other countries understand that xenophobia we are dealing with should stop. And they are doing that by using fiction, and they are doing a great job. But there are others maybe writing about the 20th century. They are doing poetry about personal issues and hardship. And they are doing their best to represent our culture and our struggles. And we as writers should feel empowered to choose the focus we like, or the place we feel we can provide more light or shed some lights and avoid or to contribute to the world to be a safer place or a not so somber place. Again, diversity of writing is his strength. So whatever you choose to do is a way for you to being empathetic with other human beings, with readers. Is a way to build community. Is a way to navigate this world that is so complicated the best way.
I think so. I think complicated is the key word. For example, I'm interested in writing a story about the death penalty in Singapore, which, it's a dangerous topic to write about. I know someone whose family member is on either death row or imprisoned for life because he was in possession of drugs. Now, knowing that story and not knowing enough about the situation, that's where my challenge as a writer comes into play. I don't want to play politics because we know Singapore has a very strict policy on drugs, but I'm interested in the human aspect of it. So when I talk to the people, they tell me of the meetings behind the glass doors and the loneliness and the silence. That's what I want to capture, right? So they're current events, they're important events, but I, as a writer, I have the right to write what I want, what I know, what I'm comfortable with, and also being conscious of the politics of the politics. So I think we dance an interesting dance of being the insider, outsider, when we write about back home or about this home or that home. There's so many homes that we write about and what we want to do. So that's very interesting. And I think that at the end of the day, when we look at what each of us as a writer wants to do, and I think Ashley is going to put something in the chat room soon, and we are going to play this little quiz. She's going to put one description or definition at the time. And oh, we have something from Ernesto. Okay, so Ernesto, do you want to just quickly read that? What you put in it?
I just wanted to, for those interested in reading about the current diaspora from Venezuela, if you are Spanish readers attending this meeting, you could check Laura Guarisco, who wrote Nido, Nest. The title is a graphic novel. She's been in Colombia. The Land is Left Behind, or Atrás queda la Tierra, de Ariana de Souza Garcia. He's living in Chile, the place where the most xenophobic community, the most xenophobia Venezuelans are facing. And Back to When, Volver a Cuando, from Maria Elena Moran. She's sitting in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That's only that I want to add.
Okay, thank you. So I have this little contest. The prize is a round the world trip, unfortunately at your own expense. So I have a description of what the four of us writers have said, and I want you to see when you read that, if you can match who said what. So I would say, at the risk of sounding naive and or corny, I write because it allows them to inhabit a world where I feel safer. One place where I can find comfort and slowly heal my wounds. Being a migrant is one of those open wounds. When I write, I find an excuse to reconnect with my roots and relate to the others with similar journeys, griefs, and challenges. So ladies and gentlemen, who do you think on this panel said this? Anyone want to guess out loud or put it in the chat room? All right, we have Mila. Come on, people, you don't want to miss out on this trip away from the cold weather. What about people on the panel? You can vote as well. Who said this?
I'd vote Mila as well.
Okay. Ernesto. All right, so let's have the next one, Ashley. My writing embodies stories of queer diasporic resistance, joy, abundance, nostalgia, melancholy, and grief, where the metaphorical becomes literal and meaning remains capacious. To imagine possibilities, to be brave, and to be free are gifts that writing brings to them. All right, so let's see. Okay, we have ViNa, all right. Okay. All right, let's look at the third one. Even if just one person finds joy or truth in what I write, it's worth all the effort. even if that one person is me. So you're guessing. The price is getting bigger. Now you get free food and drinks. So we have Mila. Who said number 3? Hey. Ernesto. All right. And the last one. I write what I know, what I observe, what I question, and what I am passionate about. My writing takes me to countries, places, and people who are part of my wonderful and unique worlds. You have to get all 4 correct, by the way, to get on this. All right. Any last guesses from people listening in? Mila? All right. So confession time. So Mila, can you tell us which one was yours?
Mine was the shortest one. Even if just one person finds joy and truth in what I write, it's all worth the effort. Even if that one person is me.
All right, Ernesto.
Mine was the first one. I would say at the risk of sounding naive or corny, I write because it allows me to inhabit a world where I feel safer. One place where I can find comfort and slowly heal my wounds. Being a migrant is one of those open wounds. When I write, I find an excuse to reconnect with my roots and relate to others with similar journeys, grief, and challenges.
ViNa.
Mine was the second one. My writing embodies stories of queer diasporic resistance, joy, abundance, nostalgia, melancholy, and grief, where the metaphorical becomes literal and meaning remains capacious. To imagine possibilities, to be brave, and to be free are gifts that writing brings to me.
Wonderful. And mine is, of course, I write what I know. And sometimes I do get irritated by the expectations that may be placed upon me quietly or loudly. So I just want to write. And what I wanted to do to show these 4 feelings, definitions of all the different writers is that's who we are. We come from all places, all spaces, and we have countries that we come from, or we don't, or we are refugees or immigrants, but that is our passion. The thing that connects all of us is writing. And I think the discussion today showed how we approach our writing in our own unique ways that is so significant and important. And so the last 10 minutes, I just wanted to know if anyone listening in had any questions or comments that we can add in. And while we're waiting for someone to type in, or if you want to say something by unmuting, let us know. Ashley will take care of that. So what are you reading right now, each one of you? Ernesto.
Yeah, one book that I'm impressed with is one about migration that I'm obsessed with that theme, I would say. It's called Solito. It's a memoir written by U.S. Someone who is living in the U.S. but is a Salvadorian originally. His name is Javier Zamora, and it's about how he was left behind by his family, and he ended up crossing the border all way back from El Salvador up north to I believe it was El Paso, or the US, when he was 9 years old. So it's really like it's painful to read sometimes, but you can for sure be empathetic with this kid and his troubles.
Thank you. I'm reading Kirti Badresa's An Astonishment of Stars. It's a wonderful collection of short stories. And I connect because the characters are similar to the Asian background I'm from, and I'm just lapping it up and saying, yes, 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 I connect, I understand. So definitely pick that book up when you have a chance to do so. Wonderful job, Kirti. ViNa.
Yeah, I think Kirti's in the audience too, so yay! I also love Kirti's debut short story collection, so good. Um, I'm currently reading two, because one is a bit lighter than the other. So, Dancing on Our Turtle's Back by Leanne Bedasamosuke Simpson is one that takes me a long time to read because it's so there's just so much in there for me to digest. The other one I read before bed is The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen. Um, Stories of Vietnamese refugees in the US and how they adapt to the new culture. Yeah.
Mila?
I'm reading Stories of the Night by Stig Dagerman, who is from Sweden, as well as a collection of poetry by Michael Lithgow, who's from Edmonton, who we thought we were when we fell right now. I'm in winter. I'm attracted to the stories from and poems from in Scandinavia because it's kind of hibernating and embracing the dark coldness of winter. So that's why I'm reading Stig Dagerman.
That's true. That brings an important question too, interesting one. Listening to the choices of books too, the reading and the writing, what do you find the connection between that? Do you read many books that inspire you, or you write your own, and how do you approach that? Anybody want to start? Let's do ViNa.
Sure. So the current novel I'm working on, I found myself before I dove back into the third draft, just reading a lot of books that play with structure and form. In a novel version though, so just playing with, I guess we refer to them as hybrid forms. That's really interesting to me. And I do find that whatever I'm reading does influence what I write, where my focus goes to, or where my imagination takes me, like thinking outside the box and how a story could be told differently. I really enjoy finding and being inspired by other writers' books for sure.
Yeah, I think that's important. I'm writing my collection of short stories, and I read Kim Fu and Kirti
Yeah,
and winners, and I'm like, oh goodness, this is how
yeah.
I write this story, or this is how intriguing, or all the different patterns that have
Mhm.
emerged that I'm experimenting with or thinking about. So very important background that, and then of course, just enjoying those stories, sitting back and saying, wow, these are brilliant. How about you,
Yeah.
Ernesto?
Yeah, the linking between what I'm reading and what I'm working on is maybe more about the topic, but it doesn't translate exactly into my writing. I just sit and enjoy, or allow me to cry with rude and raw stories that are the ones I'm reading right now. Yeah, so I'm trying to digest that and turn it into a friendly way to fight and resist.
Mila, last minute, what is your take on reading and writing?
Just at the moment, based on the titles of what I'm reading right now, you know that they're not very happy books. So they're very dark, but embracing dark winters and so on. And I'm editing two children's books, which are like very positive, very colorful. So at the moment, no links between those two, I think. But within me, it's me, the whole of me. like goes all the spectrum of joy and sadness, loss.
Right, I agree. I'm marking 300 university papers right now, and I can tell you that that's a passion killer. So there's no momentum to write there except to finish the marking. So, we read for pleasure, we read for fun, we read for inspiration, and we write for the same things. And we've come to the end of our last few minutes, and I want to say, thank you, Ernesto. Thank you, ViNa. Thank you, Mila. What a brilliant discussion, very inspiring. And of course, to Ashley for handling everything in the Writers Guild. This is such a fantastic opportunity for writers to be visible and to be heard. And we appreciate all of you in the background there. We see your names, we love you, and send us an email if you have any questions. And we look forward to the next session as well. So let's say our goodbyes. I'll start with goodbye. Thank you. See you on the world trip. Let's go together.
I won!
Good job, Mila.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
job.
Thank you, everyone. It's so
Thanks,
nice to be
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
I really have a great time with you. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
And keep on writing.